You hear me or see me?
You're good, Patrick.
Oh, good, thank
We
you.
just haven't started yet.
Hi, everybody. Are we muted?
Yes, sir. The meeting hasn't started yet.
Good afternoon. Patrick, did you do a sound check yet?
I did. I think you guys can hear me.
everyone, we just wanted to give you a heads up. We're waiting to have quorum. We were told that our third member is a little bit late, so just kind of bear with us.
No problem.
Trustees, it's an excellent opportunity to look at the memo that that Patrick put together, because I know there's a lot going on in that memo, so feel free to look it over. That way we can answer any questions. Just don't talk about it with each other.
I'm unaware of a memo, sir.
Adam,
So-
are you talking about the one I presented at the last meeting?
Yeah,
Is
so
that-
right. So I don't know if it made it into the package, trustees. I apologize, but the memo that was in the last packet, which Patrick is available today to go into as much detail as we want, just to make sure everybody understands the moving pieces. And while we're waiting, Jill, is it possible to make a copy, an extra copy of that memo?
I do not have that memo. It's not on the agenda. It was discussed at the meeting. The only thing that's on this agenda besides the third party is a discussion of the options and costs from the email that was received after that last meeting that I sent that questions from our chairperson to Patrick about options that he wanted to consider. The only reason it's on this agenda is for them to vote, because it may, Patrick will tell us if it costs money to have him do those, plan out those options that Chad, the chairperson, wants considered. It's only here to price it out and to vote on whether they want to pay for that. Okay. All right, I'm putting everybody back on mute. Okay, I'm unmuted.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is now 4:05. We'd like to call a meeting, the special call pension board meeting, to order at 4:05. Ms. Jill, if you'll take roll call, please. Here. 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 So now would be the time to read this, correct, Ms. Jill? To the members, you hereby are noticed a special meeting of the Firefighters Retirement Pension Board is hereby called for Tuesday, March 19th, 2024 at 4 p.m. The purpose at 4:05 p.m. The purpose of this meeting is to authorize the hiring of the resource centers as the pension's third-party administrator. We will move to the approval of the prior meeting minutes. Got a chance to review the minutes.
Motion to approve minutes as presented.
Motion by Mr. Leary. Second by Mr. Sugden. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimous. On to the third-party administrator, the Resources Center.
Mr. Chair, if everybody can hear me, I'd be happy to tee up this item.
Thank you, sir, if you will.
Sure. So the reason why, and this is the main reason for today's board meeting, and trustees will remember, and I'm thinking that most of you, if not all of you, were at the regular board meeting. So your meeting was in the morning, and then in the afternoon, we met with the Pension Resource Center, and all three boards met together and listened to the presentation by Scott Bauer, who is the founder of the Pension Resource Center. And we were a little disappointed, not with him, but we were hoping to get more responses to the RFP. One response was late, so it was rejected. Another RFP, I think, was also rejected because it was late, if I'm remembering correctly. So what it boils down to is you had one response. So the trustees kicked the tires, and if memory serves, all three boards meeting together were of the view that it made sense to move forward. But it was just a joint meeting, and it wasn't at that meeting where you wouldn't have been able to vote to retain the Pension Resource Center. So following that meeting, the other two boards met, and each of them, the police and the general employees, voted to retain the Pension Resource Center. So two of the boards voted yes, and they're moving forward with their contract. So now it falls to you, because you had your meeting that morning, whether or not you want to follow that recommendation. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Bauer, drove up or maybe flew in, I'm not sure, but he made himself available. He didn't want to do it through a screen. He wanted to be there in person to answer any questions. And I'll also point out that in a perfect world, we would have had Foster & Foster submit an RFP. But for various reasons, they've been growing quickly, and staff turnover. And I give Foster & Foster credit, because in addition to being an actuary, which is the vast bulk of what they do, is they serve as an actuary, which is work enough, but they also provide administrative services. So it would have been possible for them to make a proposal to be both our actuary and our administrator. But their answer was that just they had too much work going on, and they didn't want to take on new clients unless they thought they had the manpower and woman power for it, if that makes sense. So Foster & Foster made the purposeful decision not to submit an RFP. And, I give them credit for that, because they didn't want to take on new work unless they were adequately staffed. So it boils down to the question whether or not you want to use the Pension Resource Center, which was the only viable option, who timely submitted. So I'm happy to answer any questions. You met with them last time, and hopefully they answered all your questions. But again, this is the opportunity. And remember that we're losing Jill, and they've got good, when I say good, they've got big shoes to fill, because Jill's been our administrator for a while. So this way, by bringing them on board now, they can start that transition process of working with Jill, acquiring records, getting up to speed, because we want to make the transition as seamless as possible, and also notify the members that things are going to be a little bit different. Hopefully they won't lose any service, meaning that they'll still get the excellent quality service, but things will be a little bit different when you don't have a full-time person at City Hall who's the administrator. Instead, you'll have a third party working remotely who will be at City Hall from time to time, but basically working out of their regular office. So that's my effort to tee up the item, and it does require a vote if you want to move forward retaining Foster & Foster as your third party administrator.
It means the Resource Center.
The Resource Center.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
What did I say? Did I give another name? What did I say?
Foster & Foster.
Sorry. Yeah. So Foster & Foster is our actuary. Foster & Foster did not submit, but we're talking about, to be clear, thank you. We're talking about the Pension Resource Center as the administrator.
Any questions, you gentlemen?
Just one, the fee schedule, was that a monthly amount?
The fee schedule is by month, and there will be the extra $600 a month added on to that to do the monthly,
Financial statements.
bank statements. Yes, financial statements, because that's what's been done in the past. That's what I do now, is monthly financial statements, because they go into what is presented to the commission.
Thank you.
So in that, they'll work together. The Resource Center will work together with Capital City for the 2 check signing and all of those things that have to happen for payouts. And
Yes, and what the Resource Center will do is give the finance people here the information on a monthly basis for us to book the transactions into our accounting system.
And Jill, if I could put you on the spot, which I'm apologizing if I'm doing that, but I'm wondering, did Bauer send you any emails to begin the transition process for the other two boards as he started warming up?
He is here, and yes, he has sent along with the proposal was a list of items, a 75-day schedule of how to transition from transition them in.
Did
But
I
he
hear-
is here and he can
Oh.
speak. Don't forget to turn on your mic.
So trustees, I apologize. It's very hard to see, and I don't think he's on the screen. But rather than me saying anything else, you might as well listen to Mr. Bauer, who is an expert with regard to plan administration.
Just briefly, I wanted to say that I'm delighted to be here today. I don't take that for granted. Two things. One is that we haven't begun transition yet. We would need to go through the process to finalize agreements with Adam, which we would probably do following this meeting. And then the second, on just a comment from Jill on the maintenance of interim financial statements, we would maintain a detailed general ledger for the plans and pass the full detailed general ledger over to the city rather than transactions. So our intent was not to just track transactions as they relate to the retirement plan, but to maintain a full detailed general ledger for the plan, which should be less work for the finance director.
I had one more question. Mr. Levinson, just because I am completely clueless as it comes to this. Is this a standard contract that he's presented us with? Is there anything that we need to be weary of or something we need to be paying attention to, or is this pretty standard?
That is an excellent question. So let me spend a minute on it. So what we're not dealing with is an outside vendor who we've never done business with before. So trustees, if you've gone to conferences, you may have had the opportunity to see the various administrators in Florida. And I will tell you that as long as I get the name right, the Pension Resource Center is the largest plan administrator. So in other words, this is not a contract that they just made special for you. This is a standard contract that's been used. Now, what will vary from city to city is the dollar amount and things of that nature, but the underlying legal language, the boilerplate, if you will, the standard contract language has been approved and voted on and looked at by attorneys all across the state because it is the standard. And Scott, if you want to fill in any details, but it's the customary contract, which is a good thing, and it makes the point how we're not reinventing anything. We're not we're not having to build a better mousetrap because we're using what's worked, and I want to say successfully, with other plans across the state. And Scott, do you want to fill in the details on how that's the standard contract that's been used elsewhere?
I would simply say that I would do my best to keep the changes that Adam needs to make or send back to me minimal.
Thank you.
And we do not have yet a contract because this board has not authorized the hiring. So a contract will be coming.
There was a template for it, which I would review again before sending to Adam in the full proposal. So you actually do have a copy in the original proposal of the agreement or the proposed agreement.
Just a little curious about the fee schedule. Is it based on an hourly rate or?
It's a retainer rate. I can tell you that we have a really clear working knowledge of the time and the time required to operate one of the plans. I will tell you it most directly relates to the number and the total number of plan members if you want us or you want to know how I arrived at that number. It was a little less than the police plan, little bit more or less than the general employees, but again, it was proportionate to the number of plan members. And with the administration of any plan, there's just a certain amount of base time that's required in terms of the interaction with the board. And so I do review all of the plan provisions and other special things that might relate to the plan. I look at things like turnover from the valuation report. So I'm pretty thorough on how I look at it. But if you just wanted to peg it to something, you'd count your number of members and you'd come close.
Any further questions?
I don't have any questions. I love being caught between a rock and a hard place. Right, Ms. Gill?
Yep.
I can't apologize for that, but I can tell you again that I don't take it for granted.
Certainly, I can understand.
All right, so we need a motion
So-
to approve.
If we'll entertain a motion.
All right, motion to approve operation third-party administrator resource centers.
I second that motion.
Motion by Mr. Leary and second by Mr. Sugden. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you, sir.
If it's still appropriate to make a comment, I'd just say thank you. And that I truly do look forward to working with you.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for making the trip.
If you need to leave,
Yep.
we're just gonna go on to the next
I'm okay for another
10 minutes.
15 minutes, and I'd like to stay if the board doesn't mind. Of
course not.
Good for continuity.
Yeah, more than welcome. So the discussion for options for Foster and Foster. Mr. Patrick, good afternoon, sir. Thank you for being
Hello.
here.
No problem. So like Adam talked about the memo that I did, and I explained, different options going forward. We could fix the multiplier for the retirees. We could fix the multiplier for everybody. We could do a share plan. But your items on here are slightly different. Right now we have a 3.15 multiplier for everybody. And the cost is what it is. It's what it is in the 10/1/2023 valuation report. But if we wanted to change the multiplier, then yes, the cost would change. So I could do that study for you. Our minimum fee would be the $1,545. But with that, I could look at both like a 3.2 multiplier, and I could look at 7% member contributions. Right now you have 6%. And I could look at that multiplier to be for either for everybody, current and future retirees, or just future retirees. So I really could do like a 3-item study to say, okay, let's go to 3.25 for future retirees, or 3.25 or 3.2 for all retirees, current and future, and then increasing the member contribution rate, if that's what you'd like me to do. As Adam said, there's a lot more to it. There's other ideas on the table, but for this particular, what if we want to change the multiplier or the member contribution rate, I could do that study for $1,545.
We have to.
That sounds good to me. I am particularly curious about the number at 3.25 to 3.29.
Well, see, if I do 3.25, okay, you have 3.15 right now, and it's pretty well linear. So if I do the 3.25, you'll know that if you just add 4/10 more to that, you'll be at 3.29. That way you don't have to pay for a bunch of extra studies.
I understand.
I think most of the membership wants that fixed rate. So when you get hired, when you retire, you're going to get 3 point whatever it is fixed, not the fluctuating thing. Not everyone that I talk to.
Yes.
But I know that, we've got lots of options, and Jill said, maybe down the road, we could do a membership meeting, a workshop with the boards, the police and fire boards and the members, so they could come and understand, what we're talking about. But that would be kind of separate from this study, I guess.
Mr. Levinson?
Yeah, so I wanted to use the word fix because when Patrick began his overview, he described various options and he said one option is we can fix the multiplier. And it made me chuckle. And if anyone was listening or sitting in the room, they might say, fix it. Well, what's broken? So I just want to clarify that when we use the word fix, we're not fixing something that's mechanical and needs to be repaired. That means putting in place, and the reason I'm mentioning it is because I think I heard someone also use the word variable. So right now, the multiplier can change from year to year, which is good and bad. It's good in years where it's going up, but it's not so good in years where it's going to go down. So that's why when we use the word fix, we're talking about fix in place. In other words, make it a level or a flat multiplier rather than a fluctuating multiplier. And I'm going to be the first one to admit that there are lots of moving pieces here. It's a complicated conversation, and there are no right answers because these are policy decisions where ultimately, people have to get comfortable with it, they have to understand it, and then we have to implement it. And it does require an ordinance change. So it's not just the trustees, and you can't wave a magic wand. Ultimately, it has to go to the city commissioners, and to the extent that unions are involved, the members have to agree to it also. If something's going to be bargained or if something's going to be waived and just implemented without a union contract. So that's why I think it makes sense. If trustees have questions, since we have the actuary, feel free to ask those questions. And I welcome that opportunity. If we want to do a workshop down the road, I think that's an excellent suggestion if it was Jill who had that idea, because some of this stuff is new. Some of this stuff doesn't necessarily make sense to the average reader. And, we want to make it as non-complicated as possible. And Patrick is very good at doing that, trying to simplify things. So that's my way of saying ask questions if you have questions.
Thank you.
Patrick, would we still need a study if we just said, can you tell us where we need to be to give these retirees a fixed income after they retire with the least amount of adjustment expense-wise on the city and the plan?
Well, yes, I mean, we can definitely do that. I mean, that's what majority of our other plans do. Well, almost all of our other plans have a non-floating multiplier, so that it's unchanging from the time they're hired to the time they retire and after they retire. But your ordinance, your city ordinance right now says that it changes every year based on actuarial factors. So that's what Adam's saying. It would have to be negotiated and adopted by the city to make it a fixed or a stable multiplier. But
I'm
what'd you
sorry,
say?
is that ordinance, was that done to benefit the city?
Well, it was done to satisfy the way they thought the law was intended back a long time ago. So the idea of the law was, we're going to collect premium taxes from citizens of Palatka, and then we're going to give those premium taxes to the pension plan to provide additional benefits for the firefighters. And so the concept with that is, well, you have a general employee plan here, right? And they have a 2.5 multiplier. So we've said, okay, well, let's take that extra premium tax money and determine how much extra multiplier can be had above the 2.5 that the general employees get. So that's why the ordinance is written that way. It basically says every year we look at the state monies and we say, by accumulation of those state monies, what multiplier can we pay to the current firefighters, including the retirees? So it had merit or basis a long time ago, but it's not the standard way in Florida of all of our other plans. It was kind of unique to Palatka. And so that's what we're saying. It could be changed so that you could be like any other plan. And then you could share the increases in state monies in the use of like a share plan or something like that. But the firefighters would have a fixed multiplier, a stable multiplier. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Little bit. So, Mr. Levinson said, there's a lot of moving pieces here. I understand that. So it's possible you would have another client similar size and membership as ours that maybe you could model after theirs.
Correct. Yeah,
these.
we could definitely do that, and yeah, we could do that, as long as because what this is going to do, if we make it fixed, a set multiplier for the retirees and for the active employees, what that means is that if the market goes way down, well, then the city has to put in more contributions, right? Right now, if the market goes way down, we say, oh, well, now we don't have quite as much accumulated state money, so we're going to reduce the benefits to the retirees and to the active employees. So right now, some of the risk, you asked, is it to benefit the city? Well, this structure benefits the city in that, or this structure right now benefits the city in that if there's investment losses, that really gets shared between the city and the members share it in the form of reduced or increased benefits. And so it would be a different structure. It wouldn't be wrong or anything like that. And it would be more along the lines of all the other plans in the state.
So when you say that, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Lewis.
So, if you had a thought, I don't want to interrupt the thought, and then I can come in.
So when you say that the city of Palatka is unique, so how unique is that? How many other folks do you serve that have this type of setup?
Well, we have about 200 plans that we deal with in the state of Florida, and none of them, once they retire, we have no other plans that their benefit fluctuates.
Do you think that has something to do with us being like the fourth poorest city in the state?
No, I really don't. I really think that it just has to do with the fact that a long time ago, before I even started, and I've been here for 26 years, before I even started, there was an ordinance written, and like I said, it's not that it's a bad concept, to take the state monies and accumulate them and pay extra benefits to the firefighters. It's too bad that it's said in the original ordinance that any adjustments would apply to retirees. That part they didn't necessarily need to say. I do have some plans where the multiplier or the member contributions can change for active employees to share the risk. But I don't think I have any even that change the multiplier for the active employees. But I don't think it has to do with whether Palatka's poor or rich. I think it was just something that Palatka did a long time ago, and they've never changed it. Maybe it's the fact that Palatka hasn't thought about changing it, and other cities have made changes over the years. I don't know, but I don't think it has anything to do with the poorness or richness of Palatka.
So we can, so is this something that all the boards would need to do at one time? Or, I mean, you can't.
We have our own fire.
Well, that's why I think the workshop idea is good, because it's not even the board that makes these decisions. You know, it's the city that has to change the ordinance. And as Adam said, if there's unions, the unions have to sign off on it also. So that's why he's saying, let's do a workshop with the boards and the city and the membership all at the same time so that people can ask questions and understand it like you're doing right now. You know, this is a complicated issue that isn't simple to explain or just put in 2 sentences.
Yeah, yes, but for clarification, each board has the right to work its plan the way it sees fit, correct? So we changed our vest from 7 to 10 years some years ago. There should be no reason why the pension board couldn't fix its multiplier as long as it's negotiated and the pension board sees it in agreement.
Yeah, but
Yes,
that
sir.
7 to 10 year vesting or whatever would have been done by city ordinance. The board would have recommended it and gotten the cost and said, hey, here's something the membership wants or the city wants, and here's the cost, and you know, we're recommending you take this into consideration. But then the city is ultimately the one who would change the vesting provision.
Certainly.
So in effect, we're just, bottom line, if we try to move forward with this kind of change, that we'd be asking the city to take on more risk.
Depending, I mean, if we do a share plan, then the risk is still borne some by the members, because if the state money goes down, then the members get less into the share plan. So there's still some risk sharing that can be done. It just wouldn't be exactly the same as it is right now.
Can I ask a question?
Are we able to go to public comment in this case?
Yes.
We'll open the floor to public comment. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I can't?
He had just opened the floor.
You did? Okay. So my question is, the real goal is that that the retirees do not experience fluctuation, right? Once they retire, isn't that our primary goal? And then our secondary goal is that our active participants do not have too much variation between the time they start and actually move into retirement. So is such a goal even achievable, Patrick? Because I think that's what the real goal is here.
Well, it's very achievable. I mean, you were with the city of Quincy, right, before this?
Yeah,
Their multiplier doesn't fluctuate, right?
right.
So, I mean, it's doable because 200 other cities
Are
do the
doing it,
exact same method. So
right.
it's very
So that-
attainable.
Exactly, and I think that's what I wanted all of us to understand, that what you're asking for is achievable. And Patrick is correct that he probably will most definitely have to do the study, because what he has to do is give us some options so that on our side, the city side, we can possibly do some projections, you know? Okay, just wanted to make sure my mind was thinking correctly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment.
Thank you.
Now would be the time to vote for the study, if there are no further questions. Mr. Leary, you got any more questions?
Trustees, I can give some additional, I don't want to call it insight, but additional color or commentary if you want.
Yes, please.
So repeating a lot of what we said at the prior board meeting, there are lots of moving pieces and there's no right answer. And ultimately the pension board can make recommendations and the pension board can guide the conversation, but it's not the pension board's decision. It requires an ordinance, and it requires, labor and management to be together on the same page. So that's why thinking it through and looking at it and getting various eyes is a worthwhile process. So another point is that there is no right answer. And that's why one of the first comments I made earlier is there's nothing that's broken. It's worked for years. And if you wanted to leave it alone, because that's always an option, is you always have the option of leaving things the way they are. And attorneys call that the status quo. So you can leave it alone. But you heard some of the goals that were announced by someone who was speaking in public comment. And if one of the goals is to put in place or to fix the multiplier so that retirees don't have the possibility, the risk of their benefit going down, then that's something that Patrick can work with you to do, and to put in place an ordinance that would lock down in place the retiree multiplier. And everything has advantages and disadvantages. And I like the word risk, because that's something actuaries talk about. And the city has to understand that, and the trustees should understand that also, that there are pros and cons. And one of the pros of the way things have been done is that the multiplier could increase over time, and it did increase over time. But at the same time, there's the possibility in the future the multiplier could go down. And that's one of the advantages and disadvantages. So, and then when the actuary talks about risks, the possibility is that if you do lock down the multiplier, that's why there is risk potentially for the city in bad years. And over time, I think Patrick can describe these are manageable risks, but from any given year, there could be more risks for the city. And that's why the share plan methodology, where the multiplier doesn't change, but the share balances, the share allocations can change, that's something which I think has become very common the last couple of years, is to share risk in the share plan. So you'd be sharing your premium tax money, but also sharing risk in the share plan. So some of these terms we don't throw around every day, and these may be new terms for some of us. So it's important that we understand it, that we ask the actuary questions. Again, we'd love to discuss this at a future workshop, making sure that labor and management understand the various pros and cons, and getting back to the idea that was put on the table, which is the additional study. Patrick, do you want to summarize what that study does and what the study doesn't do? That way they can decide if they think it's constructive to vote on it today, or maybe they want to pull it and consider it later. But just to summarize for everybody what that proposal was, or any other proposal.
That right now, right? We talked about how this multiplier fluctuates, but right now it's 3.15 for the current retirees and the current active firefighters. And so this study would say, okay, if we want to change that right now to a different multiplier, the city's cost is going to change. And so I could do that study to say what that's going to do to the city's costs. But it isn't really fixing or addressing the issues that we have, the other issues that we're talking about. Right now, if we just change the multiplier right now, depending on how the ordinance is written, if the ordinance is written, let's change the multiplier and put it as a fixed multiplier, then you would address the issue of floating multiplier. But ideally, they could just increase the multiplier right now and still have it fluctuate every year. So is that what you meant, Adam?
So just for clarification, if it's okay, if it's all right, I would really, Patrick, like to know what a fixed set rate multiplier, I don't know what I'll try and say this the correct way, what a fixed set rate multiplier at 3.25 costs. Totally, city, right? The total cost of a 3.25 fixed set multiplier for active and retirees.
Correct. No, I understand, and the finance director is there. And if I do the study right now, and right now the cost for the city for next year is I don't have it in front of me, but let's say it's 25% of payroll. Well, if I do the study and it goes to 30% of payroll, and in that ordinance, when they make that change to the multiplier, if they delete that section of the ordinance that says every year the multiplier is going to change based on actuarial factors, then you have the permanent long-term cost of the current benefits, because that's what I do in the valuation every year. So yes, I can do that for you. So yes, I can. But like I said, then once we give this to the city and say, hey, we want this 3.25 multiplier for all the current retirees and the active employees, and we don't want it to fluctuate anymore, then it would be up to the city to decide if they want to do that.
Yeah.
But yes,
Yeah, I think we understand. But they don't have anything to operate on if they don't have that solid information.
yes, I see what you're saying. Definitely. I can do this within, 4 weeks at the latest, if you guys approve it today.
If we were gonna do a workshop, would it be better to do a workshop before or after this study?
We can do it afterwards, because I think Jill has a lot going on, and so it almost seems like it's better to do a workshop after there's a new administrator, or that type of thing anyway. So
I have another question. So say we went and we fixed the multiplier to 3.25, then on the good years, when it would have been 3.35, where would that money go? Does the city get to keep it?
right, that's where the risk is on the city, and as Adam said, sometimes that's positive and sometimes that's negative. So if we have a great year in the investments, then the city's funding requirements are going to go down. If we have a bad year on the investments, the city funding requirements are going to go up. And so the risk of investments is going to be all on the city. But as Adam said, if you look at the history of the multiplier for the firefighters, it's generally gone up. So, we've generally had good investment returns, over the long term.
Yeah, I
And
averaged
so-
it over the last 20 years, and I want to say it was like 3.26 something over 20 years was the average. So that's higher
Yeah.
than what you've been talking.
So the odds
But-
are in his favor.
But so those no longer would the multiplier change unless it was negotiated. No longer would it change. It would be 3.25. And then every time I come every year and present that valuation report, I'll say, oh, we had good experience, we had bad experience. Now the city's costs are going to go up or they're going to go down. And so that's the way it works for all of our other plans in Florida. And then that's what would happen. So the risk can be good or bad for the city. It's more volatile. The city's costs are going to go up and down more significantly because now we can't pass any of that on to the members' benefits, their retirees' benefits, or the active employees.
So Patrick, your study would be geared just towards the firefighters? Or just?
Well, it really is looking at the overall cost of providing a 3.25 multiplier, whether that comes from the city or the members. It doesn't much matter. It's a fixed cost, and it's based on the 10/1/2023 valuation. Based on the assets that were in the plan at that time, the membership that was in the plan at that time. Here's the long-term cost of providing a 3.25 multiplier. And then in the future, things aren't going to always happen exactly as we expect. So then all of a sudden, no, we didn't get our 7.25% investment return. So now somebody has to make up that money. So it'll come in the form of increased city contributions or reduced city contributions if we beat the assumption. So it's the long-term cost as of right now for that benefit structure, 3.25 multiplier, let's say. And right now the members contribute 6%. And so, if they want to, if that cost goes up by 1% of pay, and the members want to increase their contribution from 6% to 7%, then the city wouldn't have to have any increase for this multiplier improvement. Does that make sense?
Well,
When I do the study, it's
I-
going to say the total required contribution to the plan is X percentage of payroll. And then I'm going to say, okay, that's what it is right now based on the 3.15 multiplier. And then I'm going to say, well, let's make it a 3.25 multiplier. Well, now instead of the cost being X percent of payroll, it's Y percent of payroll. It's, slightly higher. And so that increased cost can be borne either by the city or the member. The member could increase their contributions to pay for that multiplier increase, or the city could increase their contributions to pay for it.
okay, maybe I didn't state that question too simply. So what I was asking is the study that you do and the cost of that study, is that something all three boards should contribute to have done, or is it just particular to each board?
Well, this would be, all three board, well, the general employees don't have to do this, right? They don't have the fluctuating multiplier. So it's really only the police officers and firefighters that have this issue. And so the police officers might want to look at changing their multiplier also, but that would be a whole separate study. So that would come from that board. So
Okay.
really, it would be from this board or from the city. If the city, is interested, they could pay for it. But the cost is really distinct for this board because I'm looking at this valuation and these members and your assets, which is totally different from the police officers.
So the city ordinance we have that they're talking about changing just pertains to the firefighters.
And the police officers have the exact same type of language.
Police would have to have one payroll.
Okay.
But like right now, the police officers have a 3.05% benefit accrual rate. And the firefighters have 3.15% benefit accrual rate. So you guys have different benefits, but you both have the same general structure that, every year you have to look at how much the state monies can buy and provide an extra multiplier for either the police officers or the firefighters. You guys have the same structure as far as that goes, but you don't have the exact same benefits.
Yeah, that's fine. That's what I need to know. We can do our own thing. That's all I want.
And then if I may ask one more question, this study, Patrick, will look a little rough in comparison because we're at the lowest multiplier we've experienced in a pretty long time. So of course, the percent of payroll is going to look higher than it normally would.
Right. The cost of the overall plan is higher because we had investment losses in 2022.
But
So
this
yeah,
is-
the baseline's higher. So if we increase the multiplier, that's going to go up a little bit more.
Sure, but that's fine because this SAP is going to average out over the years. So it's okay.
I
Correct.
think my personal feelings, having had mother and father work here in Putnam County for some 40 years, is the key is to get these guys when they retire to a fixed income where you can budget and plan around that without any fluctuations. And I think that once folks put their time in, that it's the city's responsibility, to make sure they're taken care of that way. I just think it just, I don't know of a lot of people that have a fluctuating retirement check every month. That just seems odd to me. And I could be, showing my age, but
We don't like it either. That's why we're.
yeah, I couldn't imagine not knowing if I'm going to get $500 or $600 this month, and I'm trying to live off my retirement income. That would be hard to do and hard to manage. So, I would say let's get the study done and then we use that material as a workshop.
Is that in the form of a motion?
Yes, sir. So moved.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Patrick. I appreciate it.
No problem. And so basically from this point forward, then I'll do this study. The board will get the study and can share it with whoever they want to share it with. And then at some point down the road, after we do the study, maybe we'll try to set up a workshop. And you guys could talk about the workshop at your next regular meeting in June. You could say, okay, let's plan a workshop for, down the road. Does that sound like where we're at?
I think so.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
How long is
Adam.
the study?
4 weeks.
So are you clear, Patrick, what the study is going to show? Or what
Yep,
the
I know what
parameters?
I know what I'm going to show. I'm going to show a 3.25 multiplier instead of 3.15. And I'm going to show the cost of that. And I'm going to show the cost of it if we just do future retirees, or if we do both current and future retirees. And then I'm going to show also what if the members want to go up by 1%, what does that do?
That sounds great.
Yep.
Mr. Levinson?
Thank you. So what I would add, trustees, and there's no right answer, is to keep momentum going forward. And one of the topics that came up is, who do we share the study with? And nothing here is confidential. It's all public information. So my view would be that there's no harm. And you could always give advantages and disadvantages, but in my mind, there's no harm in letting this, sharing it, Patrick, with the city. And also when trustees get it, you can't talk about it with each other because of the sunshine law, but you could absolutely share it with other folks on the labor side of the table or management. So that way, and this is, I think, the next follow-up question, which is, do we want to begin the process of scheduling that joint workshop? And it's really not for general employees, as we talked about, it's for police and fire. And I think it'll be useful for police, by the way, to see that study because they may want to borrow from it and build on it in a way. So it will be very interesting to see what police like about it or don't like about it. So that's my observation, is that to Jill and to the finance department, do we think that, are there possible dates looking forward to the next 2 months from now or so when we might want to try to meet up again? Or do you want to do the workshop at around the time of the next meeting, or do you want to wait till the next meeting before you try to schedule the workshop?
Well, here's an idea too, is that we're also going to have this transition to a new administrator. And so maybe we want to do it around that time so that Scott, I don't know if he's still in the room, but,
No,
he could come up and visit too with the membership, all at the same time. And that way, that might be even more productive. Because this doesn't have to be done. The multiplier is already set in stone for 10/1/2024. So there's not an urgency to this. I mean, obviously we want to get it changed or addressed, but I think we could wait like even 3 or 4 months from now.
Mm-hmm.
And that way the board can talk about it at their next meeting, and say, hey, let's try to set up a workshop. And it could be more towards the end of the fiscal year.
That makes sense. So we can schedule that at our next meeting.
5.
Does
Mr.
that make
Levinson,
sense, Adam?
Makes sense to me.
Mr. Levinson, I have one more question. If we meet with labor, can Mr. Sugden and I be there together, or do we need to attend that separately to explain to the labor union?
So trustees, that is an excellent question. I'm really glad you asked it. And my perspective is it's better to be safe, to be conservative, rather than to unnecessarily create perception issues. So the answer is you could, in theory, be in the room together. But what it does is it opens you up to the criticism that you're violating the Sunshine Law. Why are you in the room together? And that's why it's a trap for the unwary, meaning that the sunshine law, if you're not hyper vigilant, people can always make assertions that you inadvertently did it or purposely did it. So that's why my preference would be, individually meet with labor, individually meet with management, but don't do it together because there's really nothing to be gained. Just meet individually. And the other thing is, you can't use another person as a conduit to communicate with each other, right? So, if you're meeting with the city manager or meeting with a union official, it doesn't matter. Don't make it seem as if you're asking the union official to communicate with another trustee or using the manager to communicate with another trustee, which is why the workshop is a perfect fulcrum or perfect, launching pad to have these conversations, because it gets noticed as a board meeting and you can talk all day long at a board meeting or at a workshop and share information. So that's my answer, is feel free to share the report that comes down from the study that comes out of Patrick. Feel free if anyone wants to ask you questions, that's great, but just be careful that there's no perception that two trustees are talking with each other behind the scenes or otherwise. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick, can you provide us with email, letter, or something just stating what you're doing and that cost?
Sure, I can email Joe.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from the board?
When is our next one?
The next meeting is June 4th. At the normal 10 a.m. The other boards will be meeting earlier because of the demands in this room, but you're going to be meeting at your regular time.
Any other business? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Thanks, everybody. Bye now.